Hello friend, welcome to Agrisha. This game is set up for 3 players. We'll go over the rules as briefly as possible in this video. Now, the goal of the game is to control the most major factions by the end of 6 rounds for a 2 or 3 player game, and by the end of 8 rounds for a 4-player game. There are 7 major factions and 3 minor factions, so we'll zoom in on those. So these 6 at the top are major factions. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, they say the word major. The Wizards Guild down in the second row is a major faction as well. And then there are 3 minor factions. They say minor. The minor factions do not count for victory points. You win by having control of the most major factions. Now, the reason why there are 6 here in the Wizards Guild, even though it's a major faction, is not up with them, is because these 6 are regions in the city. Certain cards will maybe say have a dragon come to a region of the city, and it will go to one of these regions. The same with other things like the peasants. Peasant counters can be put on different regions. The Wizards Guild, they are a major faction, but they are not a specific region of the city. And minor factions are not regions either. These other 2 cards are there to help you. This one has the costs for the various things in the game, and this one has the timings. And this makes the game look maybe more complicated than it is, but we will talk about that in a moment. So those are the factions. You want to have the most favor in them. So if you have, say, 2 favor in the Adventurers Guild and another player has 1, you have the majority. You have control of the Adventurers Guild. Now, the other player can use the ability of the Adventurers Guild still, the second ability, but the first ability is only available to the person who has the majority. And then, like I said, at the end of the game, this would count as 1 controlled faction for the first player, and so then whoever has control of the most wins. Now, if players have 2 each, nobody has the most. Nobody has control of the Adventurers Guild if there's a tie. You have to have more than your opponents. And you don't have to have more than your opponents combined. So for example, this guy's got 2, and she has 1, and she has 1. So then this green player still has a majority. They still control the Adventurers Guild. Even if, say, it's 3 and 2 and 2, still 3 beats 2. You just look at each opponent individually to see who controls it. So there are 3 greens, so that means that the green player controls this faction. All right. Now, the game is played in a series of rounds, and in the rounds, there are a number of phases. Even though there are 9 here, there are really 2 phases, the resource drafting phase and the action phase. The reason why the resource drafting phase is basically broken into 7 phases is to help with the timings of various abilities. So if you look at the cards, for example, the Bankers Guild in the upper right-hand corner, there is a 1, so that ability happens during the first phase, or it has an ability on the card that happens during that phase. Same with the Farnworths, but the Thieves Guild happens during the 6th and 7th phases. So that's just there to help you. But really, there are 2 basic steps to every round. So first, you draft resource dice. So you draft 3 for each player. And there are 8 wood, 7 ore, 5 gold, 4 gem, and 2 bamboo dice in the bag. You can see it in the component section of the rulebook. Then, as you're drafting, if you draft a bamboo die, you do roll it, and you draw the top card of the deck, and sometimes this will have an effect on the draft that's happening, and then you replace the die. Okay, after you've drawn and you've got 3 dice for each player, we'll look at that in a moment. Roll the dice, and then you take turns drafting. So the first player will draft. 5 gold seems pretty good. In the early game, ore and gold is very strong. Gems are useful for later in the game and for certain special buildings. If you look at the building deck right now, this one costs 1 wood, this costs 2 wood and 1 ore, this costs 2 gold, and this costs 4 wood and 1 ore. So there's no building available for gems right now. If we look at the costs to put favor in a faction, if there's 0 favor of any player in the faction, it costs 2 ore to put a favor into that faction. If there's 1 from any player in the faction, it costs 3 ore. If there's 2 from any player or players total in a faction, it costs 3 ore and 1 gold, and so on. So the number on the left is the total favor of all players added together in that faction. And then you go to the right and you pay that much to put another favor in that faction. So ore is important at the beginning, and then gold and gems become more important later on. Now, gold is also very powerful because instead of paying wood or ore, you may use gold instead. So this costs 2 wood and 1 ore, but you could pay 3 gold, or you could pay 2 wood and a gold, or a gold, a wood and an ore, or whatever. Gold can be substituted for wood and ore as you like, but there's no other substitutions of resources. So this player drafts the die, puts it in the bag, and goes up to 5 gold. Now it is important that you record the new resources immediately, because those resources can be used later in the same draft. For example, if the green player has a favor in the Thieves Guild, then they can use the abilities of the Thieves Guild, and the pay 1 gold, 1 wood, and 1 ore at the bottom. Before drafting a resource die, change it to gold, roll it, and draft it. So that happens while we're doing the drafting. So getting that gold maybe would have given me enough to then change a die to gold and draft it. So this is particularly good if you're the last person in the draft. The last die is maybe not so good, so you can spend some resources to change it to gold and then roll it and hopefully do better. Now, the next player will just choose dice. When it comes to the third player, they get to choose, maybe choose some wood so they can grab some buildings, and maybe grab the 3 gold as well. And so they get 2 dice, and then it comes back around this way. So they draft, and they draft, and then they draft again, and again, and then the end. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. It's a snake draft. All right, and they should have been recording those and putting them back in the bag as they were drafting them, but we're just trying to keep it short and simple here. Okay, so that's the resource phase. After that's done, you put them all in. The banes and boons may have an effect on what's happening in the city, and we'll look at that momentarily. But I want to talk about the action phase first. So during the action phase, there are 4 things that players can do: purchase a building or soul, purchase favor in a faction, use a faction ability, or use a building or soul ability. Those are the 4 options. So you do one of those things and then pass to the next person, and then they do one, and so on. You go round and round and round until all 3 players pass consecutively. So you can pass, and then later on you can come back in and play as long as the other 2 players don't pass right after you. Okay, so purchasing a building is pretty simple. You just look, this costs 2 wood and an ore. You pay that, and then you put it in front of you. So we can pay with 3 gold if we want, and now we have the building, but we can't use it right now. It goes to the next player. Maybe the next player puts a faction down in the Farnworths. And, oh, I'm sorry, this player's the blue player. So maybe they put it in the Adventurers Guild. The next player puts it in the Farnworths. And now I could use this ability if I wanted to, or, do something else. Oh, I should have filled in this, my mistake. So you just make sure there are always 4 cards in the queue here. All right, now could purchase a building, could purchase favor in a faction, could use the building ability. Now, the abilities of some buildings say work. Work, gain 1 gold for each token on this card. And work means you flip the building upside down, and it can't be used until it is unworked, which is the beginning of the next round. So those work abilities are one-time use abilities each round. And again, a round ends when all 3 players pass in a row, and then the bag goes to the next player, and they start the next round with the draft. Then the draft would be player 2, player 3, player 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1. So that's That's how the rounds work and the work abilities work with these cards. The soul cards here, they say soul in the upper right hand corner. When you purchase them, you may use them immediately. So I could purchase it and immediately discard it and use its ability. It says move one opponent's favor from one major faction to another major faction. So you could move this over here to the Pikmars. Or if you don't want to use it right away, you can put it in front of you for later. Make sure you fill up the queue again. And later in the game, if you want to use it, you must spend an action. So if you purchase it, you can use it right away for free without spending an extra action to use it. But if you do put it in front of you, it does cost an action to use that later in the game. Okay, so yeah, you purchase buildings and souls. You purchase favor in a faction. You can use these abilities, and then the factions also have abilities. For example, the Adventurers Guild says pay X favor. Draw and roll 2x dice. You may use this ability twice each round. So if you've got a favor on there, you may choose to remove the favor, and you will roll 2 times 1. You'd roll 2 dice. So you grab 2 dice from the bag, and you would roll them. So if I grab 2, oh no, it's the boon die. So that would actually trigger another Bane in this case, and then you would get your second die, and then you'd be able to roll them and add those to your resources. So you can pay favor by removing favor from a faction. So that's one thing that's tricky about the game. You put your favor on a faction, and you want the favor to be there in order to win, but removing the favor sometimes will allow you to get more resources so that you can put more favor on in the long run, and that will help you. So you have to balance how much you're putting on and how much you're taking off of the factions. Now, this ability said use this ability twice each round, so you should mark that you have used that ability one time. There's only the Adventurers Guild and the Bankers that have those limitations. The Bankers Guild is just once per round. Okay, so we'll take a look over at the Banes here. We'll just look at the Doppelganger controversy. That's pretty simple. So it says Wizards 6. That means this will stay around until the players total have 6 favor in the Wizards Guild. So put that there, and there's 5 and 6. Okay, so there would be 6 favor in the Wizards Guild, and then this Bane would be defeated, and the players would divide up the resources below. 8 resources for first place for the player who contributed the most favor, 5 for second, and 2 for third. All the players contributed 2 equally here, so you would add those up to 15 and then divide by 3. Each player would just get 5 resources of their choice. So that could be 3 gold and 2 gems, or 5 gems, 5 gold, whatever resources the players would want, they can choose to add those. Now that's how you defeat it, that first line, and then the second line is what you get for defeating it, and then the rest is the ability. So this says players cannot use the faction abilities of the Farnworths, Pikmars, or Lamreens. Players cannot gain favor in the Thieves Guild. So that makes some big changes in how the game is played, because the 3 main families cannot be used, and you can't gain any more favor in the Thieves Guild. So these Banes and Boons can cause some very dramatic changes in what's happening on the board. Okay, now there are a lot of cards and a lot of different abilities. We're not going to go into those in this video. Hopefully you have a better idea of how the game is played, and if you have any questions at all, please post them in the forums on BoardGameGeek, or you can send a private message to me, who's him, on BoardGameGeek as well. Thanks for visiting Agrisha. Have a great day.